So now I wanted to show you guys how you can build this type of editor utility widget. So you're going to right click, go to editor utilities, say editor utility widget, and then you're going to say stack box. That's what I use. It's allowing you to stack vertically or horizontally. So we're going to call it like test for tutorial. Save, open, hit enter to open. You're gonna make sure this aligns to vertical, and then you're gonna lay down a button. You're gonna lay down text inside of that button, and then we're gonna call this something like test, and you say is variable, which is gonna allow you to call it in the graph. Here you're gonna select your text. There's a font. You can make it like 16 or something, or 20. And you can call, this is where you call it something, so button test. And then you're gonna save, compile and save. Now in here, this is where you get, on the graph, you get access to all the stuff. So here, this is a variable, and you can have different events. So on clicked, on pressed, we want on clicked, because whenever we click on it, we want something to happen. And for now, we're just gonna print the string to console. We're just gonna say clicked button. We're gonna compile and save. I'm gonna come over here. I'm gonna right click and hit run. And we're gonna say this. And you need to have real time turned on for this to work. So clicked button. You can also look at the log. This will do the same thing. But I like seeing it in here. Unfortunately, I haven't figured out yet how to do this with Python, but when I do know, I'll let you guys know. This is a very beginning test. So in order to import in this module here, we need to save it to a particular path. So in my case, I have it inside of my documents, Unreal Scripts, Python. This is where all my scripts live, and they all kind of talk to each other. So you just make your file wherever you want it, and then what you're going to do is you're going to say execute Python script. So this is a very handy thing because you can actually put in inputs and outputs. It's a little tricky because if you forget to do an output, you're forced to output some. Like if you have an output, you have to export it out. I think it works the same way with inputs. I don't remember. So the point is, you can feed information in and then feed information out of this. So whatever you call a variable, so say you call this variable test hello, say you output test. Now whatever test equals inside of this particular script, you're going to output. So we can actually say print string, and we can output out this test, this string test. So let's do that. So we're going to click that, and it says hello. Let's call it something else. Let's say test dummy. Compile test dummy. So you can see whatever you say equals to here, that's what's going to output. And you can also provide variables. So in this case, let's actually go back to the designer. Let's call an input, and let's say editable text. This is going to be a variable, and we're going to say path. This is our path. And hint text, we're going to say input path for sequence, right? And we're going to say okay. And now you can see input path for sequence. This is where our path's going to go. Let's make that a little bit bigger because that seems very small. Let's make that like 20. Let's see what that looks like. Perfect. All right. So we have path as an actual thing now. So now we can click on it and we can say on text change. So once this text is changed, we want to do something. You could take this and just pass it in. Let's call this, hit shift enter to go down one. So we're going to say path is equal to, let's just call it text. So here we're going to say, we're going to make a new input called text, and we're going to make a new output called path. So I want to print both the path and the text. We're going to put the text in here, and we're going to see what that does. Test dummy. Okay, here. Here, let's just put this particular path inside of here. And that didn't seem to actually work. I think because we need to convert this into a string. So let's do that. So we'll say print string. And then if you do this, it'll convert it. So we're just going to put that into here. Nope, that's not what I want. Once you define it, it becomes that continuously. So we don't want that. We want to make sure it stays a string. Okay, so there we go. So now we've put in the text. Now here's the thing. We want to make sure that this text in the path gets updated every time that we type something in here. Like, we want to make sure that it's always updated, it's always up to date 100%. Otherwise, I guess you could just get the path and then say get text. You could also just do this. This could also work fine. In my particular case, what I did was I converted this into a variable, but you could also just do this, making sure that, yeah, you could do the same thing. So we could just do this. It just gets the right path. And then if you wanted to remove all, you could do that here. Or you could do it in your module. Now let's talk about loading in your modules. Recently, I found out that a good way of doing this is actually creating, let's put this here, is actually creating a blueprint. So you can go to Editor Utilities, Editor Utility Blueprint, and it's a editor function library. So you want to call this editor function library test. Just, that's what I'm calling it. So what we're going to do is we're going to have this function called every single time. Inside of all of our modules, or like for instance in here, I have I still haven't updated this to do this particular method, but you can see I have all these sys.path append. Well, what if I change my Python directory? That's going to be a big pain to change. And so what we're doing here is we're going to make a function. We're going to reload all the modules. We don't actually have to do anything here. So we're just going to call this reload modules EFL test. This is just for me, just so this is what it's called. So here we're gonna Python script, and here's where we're gonna import in our modules. So import sys, import lib, sys if, so path is equal to your path. In my case, it's here. So we're gonna just copy this. We're gonna say if path not in sys.path, and then we're gonna say sys.path append path. Okay. So this is gonna ensure that the path only gets called once. So if it's not in the path, then it's going to append path to in the system path, and that way it gets loaded. Once we've created that function, that's all we have to do. And in here, in our test for tut, we can say reload modules EFL test. So as soon as the button gets clicked, it's going to reload the modules using this Python script we wrote. And if I ever need to change the Python, I can just change it here once, and it would update into all of these other, like if you had more buttons, as long as you plug this in front of your button, it would reload all your modules in the same exact way. So I just found this out. That's actually really helpful. I just haven't implemented it into my this is my older version of the tool. Anyway, so once you do that, you are going to load in your let's get rid of this because I've shown you the concept. But now what I want to do is execute Python script. I'm going to execute Python script. We're loading in that module already. And let's say we're going to call it like import path config as PC. And we're going to say import lib.reload PC. We can also in here, we are loading in sys and import lib. So anything, those modules are already being loaded when we execute this, so we don't have to do it here. So let's just say print, or let's just say PC. Okay, so when you put in your path, you need to make sure that they are all / and that you have the end slash also included. Okay, so I figured it out. So your reload modules, it doesn't, whenever you import in lib, it doesn't pass that import into the other Python scripts down the line, unfortunately. So what that means is you have to import lib to reload the module every single Python script, which kind of sucks, but that's the way it is. So we're reloading, and then here I'm just converting this into a string by getting the file of the module itself, and I'm putting it into a string, and then we're outputting it. See, this is what it looks like. So it does work to put the path into, but just remember that the folders have to be / and you have to have an end / at the end of the string. Also, make sure that you have an init file inside of that structure as well. Otherwise, this won't work at all. So you always have to make sure you have an init file in your parent directory, in this main directory. Otherwise, yeah, it won't work. So that's what this is doing. So we don't need this sys.path print. And now whenever we compile and save, it is loading correctly into the thing. So here we wouldn't actually do this. We don't need the path config. I was just showing you how to do it. We don't want this anymore. Oh, yeah, this is also problematic when you do this. So just be careful with making sure that everything's disconnected before you get rid of these outputs and inputs. Otherwise, it will break. So yeah, this is kind of how you import in a module. You can look up the rest for how you actually execute it, but basically what I've learned is that any function that you have in here. So let's actually build, just to show you, function test.py, and we're gonna call it like fun test. We're gonna input in something in this function, so input, and we're gonna say print input. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get rid of this. We're gonna say import func test as ft, import lib reload ft, and then we're gonna say this is called func test. So we're gonna get that function and put it in here. So we're gonna say fun test. So ft.funTest, and we're gonna input in hello. This hasn't returned anything yet, but essentially, if we return input, it's gonna return whatever we give it. So here, if you give it hello, and we call it like string test, it's gonna return this string out, and this will be a string type. I'm not gonna tell, like, this is just like very basic Python stuff, but this is how you get things in and out of modules inside of Python. This is how I've known to do it. Once we have that, we can print string test out. If we put it here, so we're inputting hello, let's call it like Dexter, and then we're feeding that back out, and we're getting that. So if I click it, you'll see Dexter. So what we're doing is we are feeding in this string Dexter into the module. The module's receiving that input, and then it's returning it back right back out. We could even say plus harmony, just because we can. Let's see what that does. Dexter harmony, so you have proof that it is in fact modifying the string or returning it and then feeding it into print string as string test. So that's how you get it. Now let's take it one step further. Let's input in our path to string. Let's call this path. Let's put this here, and then instead of feeding in this is where it gets really interesting. We can feed in path. So, and that did not, oh, right, because nothing's in there. So let's put something in there. That would probably help, wouldn't it? So now you see all Houdini engine, Tyler scripts underscore harmony. So we've taken that path and we put in harmony. So that's how you input and output variables within modules. I'm yet to figure out an efficient way to get multiple outputs. As far as I know, you have to do lists. So you can do like list one, or not list, but like, you know, variable 1, variable 2, variable 3. And then inside of your this, you would create a string, an array here. So var1, var2, var3, corresponding to the same output that your return value is going to be. And then that's how you can set multiple different outputs according to, this is the only way I know of how to do it, to get inputs and outputs correctly from modules on disk, is that you have to feed it. You have to give it inputs exactly into the function. Your function cannot read stuff out here, I don't think. Like if I say let's say test, let's say test is igloo, and we try to read in igloo inside of here, it's not gonna work. Like if I say print igloo, it's gonna be like, what? It's probably gonna error out. Yeah, igloo is not defined. So we've defined it here. Oh, sorry. We called it test. So let's call it test. So it's still saying test is not defined. So even though it's defined here, it's not coming into the function unless we specifically tell it to. So that's a huge drawback. That's why I'm saying you have to like include it here into as an input and then read that in. Let's get rid of all these just to show you. So we're outputting test. Let's just call this, okay. Yeah. That should give us igloo. Let's clear this. Yeah, that should give us igloo. So this is the only way I've found of how to do it correctly, is basically feeding it directly into the argument. So that's a quick rundown of how you can put Python into Unreal and how to access modules inside of Unreal. Again, this is just from my experience. I'm not an expert. This is just what I've learned how to do. So I hope this helps somebody. And yeah, let me know feedback, comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I really appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys later. All right, bye.